One of the oldest and most infamous vehicles within World of Tanks console is what we're looking at today, and we have an amazing replay showcasing what this tank can do when everything goes right, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this vehicle is always going to be like that. So let's take a look at the Maus. This is the German tier 10 super heavy vehicle, which to all intents and purposes definitely doesn't suit my playstyle. Super slow vehicles, I find, within the game can be very frustrating to play, as you often sacrifice mobility in order to get armor. However, a lot of the super heavies in the game are prone to premium ammunition, just making them basically useless in terms of their armor, so you sacrifice your speed for absolutely no real gain if you come up against anyone that knows anything about what they should be doing. But either way, we are going to see what the Maus can do, how you can combat the armor that some of these tanks have, as well as showcase off one of the oldest vehicles in the game, of course. The one that everybody probably goes towards at some point in their World of Tanks console career. So with that being said, the Maus, what does this tank actually feature and how do you get it? Well, it comes in at the tier 10 of the German super heavy line, coming from the Mauschen, the VK1001P, the Tiger P, which yeah, I feel sorry for anyone having to grind the Tiger P, and then of course all the way down from all of the tanks below that. But the Maus features this super strong armor model whereby you've got very thick plates all over the front of the tank, including the lower plate. However, it is 200mm thick, but because of the angling of the front of this vehicle, you'll find that a lot of people will be able to just go straight through the front of the gun or the frontal plate on the lower plate because it's not very well angled. But you can counter this by doing something like this, where you're angling in this sort of orientation, because it makes the angle steeper in two directions rather than just the one, which would be here, because now you have an angle in the if X and Y is, or X is this direction and Y is up and down, you will then have an angle on both of those when it comes to this tank. So that's always great, and it should be able to at least give you the potential to bounce a couple of rounds a bit more than usual. Now the problem is that when you do this, combine that with the turret armor of the Maus, you'll often get penned in the cheeks of the Maus, which are these parts here. You can see on the front of the turret, it's 260mm thick, but pretty much anyone with a tier 10 vehicle with premium ammunition will have enough to go straight through the front of the turret, which means you're going to have to angle the turret. But in order to make the turret of the Maus the most effective as possible, you want to be angling in this sort of orientation to avoid being penned. However, this doesn't tie up with the hull armor of this vehicle, because your hull armor you kind of want to be in this sort of region here, because you don't want to expose too much of the side where they can pen you through the side like this, but also you want to make sure that you're not exposing the turret to its weak points as well. So you kind of have to off-center the turret to where you're angling the actual hull armor. Bit confusing, but you'll see it in the gameplay later on. Of course, that's not the only thing about the Maus. It has this giant spaced armor on the side of the vehicle that acts really well, and it has some plates on the side as well, which are great, that you can see here. The two plates, the upper plate, well, the upper side plate, if that makes sense, which is the orange, and then you've got below that the kind of greeny yellow color, which is the lower half. So if you're trying to pen through the Maus, the lower half is usually decent, but at the same time, because you've got the tracks underneath the lower half of the vehicle, you can see them here, it's kind of you might as well go for the top area anyway, because it's not that thick. So if you see a Maus like this, aim for the top. So counterintuitive to what you might think, with the weaker part of the armor being on the lower bit, as you can see here, because there's tracks behind it, you're not going to be able to pen as reliably. And I'm sure you want to make sure that every single shot you fire has the best chance of penning. So if you're wondering about a Maus, that's where you want to try and shoot it, in the side, especially if you're playing in a tier 8 vehicle against this thing. Side of the turret is quite weak. When people find the side in this sort of angle, this area here, you should just be able to go straight through the side of it. It's not particularly too difficult. You don't even need premium ammunition with a lot of tier 9 and above, and often quite a few of the tier 8s as well, unless of course you're in a very low penetration medium tank. But with that being said, the armor's quite decent with this vehicle. Obviously it can work, but you know, you shouldn't always rely on armor, and the best way of avoiding damage in the game is to not get shot at in the first place. So that's where playing heavy tanks can be very good if you combine the kind of strategies that you use in a medium tank, which is why I always suggest playing medium and heavies as your first two kind of tech tree lines that you go down, to ensure that you know how to avoid damage whilst also being able to block damage at the best ability that you can in the game. And if you combine that both together when you're playing a heavy, you can have some really good games. But yeah, I certainly think that heavy tanks are struggling at the minute, especially with all of the tank destroyers that are currently in the game with such high penetration values that even the upper plate of the Maus is a pain. But this tank is an old one, so can it compete in today's current matchup? Well, absolutely. The Maus does get pretty good damage per minute. It gets pretty good overall kind of speed when you compare it to what it's previously been. We are running this with a full speed build where we're going with traction system and advanced powertrain for increased speed and of course increased mobility. This is very crucial for when you're playing such a slow tank. That's kind of why I always run it. We're also running this thing with enhanced repair kit. We put fuel in it, which I would definitely not use fuel, to be honest, but it will limit your speed, and I would definitely run an enhanced med kit or a standard med kit instead of the fuel. But if you're interested in being a bit faster, which I always am when I'm playing these super heavies, then yeah, fuel is a potential option, but I'd say it's probably not what everyone's going to want. And then of course enhanced combat rations is going to boost this thing insanely fast, so that's the one that you're going to definitely want to have on the Maus if you're playing this thing. And of course swapping out the standard repair and the standard med kit if you don't want to spend the money on premium consumables for your med kit and repair kit. But definitely always have premium enhanced rations on every single game in every single tank that you do play if you want to remain competitive. Now, with that being said, of course, the premium ammunition on the standard rounds and the penetration on the standard rounds and the premium ammunition, there's quite a big disparity, which is why you're going to have to load quite a few of these premium rounds for other super heavy vehicles. So definitely have them in there, hence why we've got 38 standard, 25 premium and 5 HE for if we meet a waffle or something like that with basically no armor, as the penetration on the HE is not very good. It's 65, nothing to sniff at, but at the same time it isn't great, and so we want to be able to have at least a couple for the lightly armored targets. But with that being said, what else do we have? Well, view range wise, it's nothing spectacular. It's a super heavy 434 meters of view range. Could potentially, if you're not wanting to go for speed, you would be running advanced optics to boost up that view range, which, you know, it is a potential option. I think it is valid to swap out the speed and then go with a gun stabilizer as well as the other kind of speed boost equipment. So dropping both of the speed boost and picking up stabilizer and advanced optics if you want to have a decent overall build that will work a little bit better, to be honest, than having the speed boost equipment. But we run it just because I hate playing slow tanks, and we can make up for the other kind of things by just having a lot more experience than probably quite a few people in this game, because I've played way too much. But with that being said, of course, you guys may or may not want to follow in my footsteps, or you might want to try a more standard build, which I fully agree with, and I think it is the better build for the Maus. Either way, we are running with a weird skin on this thing. You can pick up a actual skin. It's the Krampus Claws. It is the Christmas skin for the Maus. I picked this one up, unfortunately, for a lot more gold than I was expecting, as it cost me about 7,000 because it came with the T20 8 HDC skin, which I already had, but it didn't give me the gold value back of already having the skin. So I have two duplicates of the same skin for the 228 HTC, which is really annoying because I thought it was going to give me the gold and then I'd just get the discount on the Krampus Claw skin. Didn't work like that. Brilliant idea, Eclipse. Way to spend a ton of gold on something that you definitely didn't need. Either way, we've then obviously, if we want to go full Maus mode, we can put on the permanent pink camouflage just to add to the, I guess, how do you say, nostalgia of the Maus. And I'm sure that if this was a real camouflage, it would be very undetectable. Either way, yeah, that is what we're running with in the Maus. So hopefully that gives you an indication as to what you can expect with the Maus in terms of its stats and stuff like that. Nothing really crazy. It has the most hit points in the game. And yeah, when you combine that all together, you can have a really solid tank. And I think you guys would enjoy this. And the tech tree line leading up to it is painful, I won't lie. So it's probably the most annoying line to go down. And I would actually recommend going down it when you're a newer player, not because of the fact that it will be an easy line to play and it will be enjoyable, but because it will be easier to grind it at the beginning because you won't know what you're doing, and maybe even in a good tank you would find it painful, so you might as well play a terrible kind of tech tree line in terms of the tanks before it, or at least a painful one to play in most occasions when you're a newer player, so you get it out of the way for when you start to become more, I guess, efficient or proficient in World of Tanks, where, you know, you understand that it's going to hinder you playing some of these tanks. But either way, the Maus is definitely the best of the line leading, or at least the best of the line, which is great. It's the tier 10, it's the one you want to be the best, and yeah, this certainly is much better than the Maushan and the VK1001P, and of course the Tiger P before it. So with that being said, let's jump into the gameplay now to see what the Maus can actually do. Can it survive in 2024 on World of Tanks console? Let's find out. Well then, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting off with Cliff, and this was a match that I genuinely didn't think we'd be able to pull off the result that we did. Cliff is kind of one of those weird maps where you can have really amazing games when you're playing in a super heavy tank, but it is very much dependent on what the opponents that you're playing actually do and how you can kind of combat that and come away with a decent win at the end of it. It is a strange one, certainly, to play in a super heavy. You've got a lot of opportunities to get hit in the side if you don't position yourself perfectly. And there's a lot of different things that you can go very badly wrong when you are playing Cliff. Now, of course, this is a good spot to go for at the beginning of the game. You can often hit the light tanks who try and take the middle from that spot. So if you're playing any game, don't stop there, but you can go for the blind fire, or at least go for a fire on the move when you are moving into your position at the beginning of the game. If you stick on the corner just behind us by the rock, you can often find yourself being stuck there for the rest of the game. So you need to get into position early enough so that you don't end up there for the rest of the game. Now, we do miss out on a little bit of AMX 13105, or a little extra portion, shall we say. And in this game, I want to make sure that we secure the middle of the map so our team can push in with me. If we don't get team support in the middle, you basically lose Cliff. This is why you don't camp at the back of the map. Albeit, there are a lot of tank destroyers in this game, and have been for the last multiple weeks in the game. It's been really bad in terms of how many tank destroyers have been in the game, and it's certainly been horrible to actually play recently at tier 10 because of some of the operations that they've got. You can see here we get penned in the turret. This is the weak point of the Maus. If you're looking at someone directly on, they can pen you very easily in the turret, which is, yeah, not what you want in a super heavy vehicle, to be penned straight through the front of the turret. It basically doesn't happen in any other vehicles in the game in terms of heavy tanks, to be honest. Like things like the IS-7, if you try and go for a frontal turret shot, it's gonna bounce unless you're playing in a 268 with heat ammunition, firing at a very specific point either side of the gun mantlet, which you can pen. But then again, it is such a slim shot and most people won't be able to do it. The Maus is, as I always say, a flat armor blocker. It relies on people just not having the penetration to make it work. If they don't have the penetration, they don't pen you. If they do have the penetration, they pretty much pen you every single time. It's not really a case of troll armor. You don't get any kind of weird spaced armor on the front of the tank. You don't get any kind of spaced armor on the front of the turret to avoid taking damage, like the Super Conqueror, that sort of thing. And often, yeah, you do just get punished quite hard. But you can see what we're doing here is just making sure to avoid being hit. You can see there the shot into the front of the turret, the little hole on the cheeks. That's where you want to be aiming if you're playing up against this thing. Unfortunately, we bounce because the VZ just pulls in front to take the shot instead of where we were actually aiming at the Type 59-2. You can see me angling here. It's a pretty decent angle to avoid taking some damage. We're just waiting for this Type 59 to come out. We hit him once and go back to angling again, avoiding being able to be hit and only giving the side of the vehicle a very steep angle where they just won't be able to pen for most of the time. Of course, when you're in a super heavy, don't think that you are completely invulnerable. High caliber TDs and high penetration medium tanks will be able to pen you even at some ridiculous angles. High penetration heavies, that sort of thing, like super high caliber guns will be able to remove your health very, very quickly. So, what do we do in this game? How can we get a little bit more damage? Because there's plenty of it in this game. So, do I go over to take out the E4? And I think, yeah, we're in the Maus. Why wouldn't you? You've got to take some fun when you're playing in vehicles like this. Sometimes it's not all about being the most competitive and, you know, trading your hit points of your teammates as you do damage and hopefully do way more damage than you're going to take and that they've dealt to your teammates, which is basically the key to success in this game, is just making sure that you deal more damage than you take and deal more damage than your teammates end up just throwing away. So if you can do that consistently, you'll end up with a much better win rate. You could see I was angling both the turret to the right, that's to give our turret a better chance of bouncing, and we were angling the front of the hull armor, but he still manages to hit us for a ton of damage. It is the Sturmtiger after all, and yeah, not ideal at all. But in coming to this location, we're just trying to see whether we can get a free shot into these guys, which we do, and there we go, we're up to 5k damage so far. At this point in the game, I know we are going to win. Or at least I am almost certain we are going to win. We'd really have to mess this one up if we were to lose. I get hit by an E4. I kind of expected to be hit by a high caliber TD. It wasn't that much of a kind of a shock, I guess. And you can see here the E4 is over here. He bounces off the side. We tried to angle just as much as we could there to avoid taking some damage. And we're just kind of pushing up towards wherever the enemy team are going to be. There's 2 tank destroyers left. We've got, of course, this E4 that was there from the earlier. Can we get a shot into him? We do, but it's just a snap too late, and the STRV finishes him off. But we're up to 3 enemies taken out, 5.7k damage and 1200 blocked. You can see that the block damage when you're coming up against a team with half of them being tank destroyers doesn't always work as you might intend, and yeah, this is the problem at the moment with tier 10 matchups and playing super heavies. Because of the operation, you will find that there are a lot of tank destroyers that will go through you very easily, and so you don't end up bouncing as much as maybe you would hope. But of course, the victory here, we picked up 1393 base experience, 6.1 thousand damage, 4 enemies taken out, a pretty decent result in, of course, the Krampus Claw skin, and yeah, probably one of the biggest MVP screens you're going to see, with the Maus basically taking up 90% of the screen, which is always great. But either way, hopefully that video gave you an indication as to the Maus. We kind of ran through everything. If you've got any questions or you want to see this tank make its return on the channel, then make sure that you do subscribe down below. And if you want to support me financially, then feel free to join the channel as a channel member, and you get a few little badges and stuff like that. And access to a couple of other kind of member perks as well that come alongside, and of course priority in streams to jump in with me to play as well. But of course, if you have watched this far and you have enjoyed, then feel free to take a look at these videos on screen, and if you join me there, you're an absolute legend, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.